I'm sure you guys saw the thing this last week where Nancy Pelosi like went on TV and called Trump morbidly obese.
Mm-hmm.
Regrettably, I did.
Yeah. The quote is, as far as the president is concerned, he's our president, and I would rather he not be taking something. She's talking about that what is that stuff called? Hydrochloroquine that he says that he's taking or whatever to fight off COVID. I would rather he be not taking something that has not been approved by the scientists, especially in his age group and in his, shall we say, weight group, morbidly obese, they say. So I think it's not a good idea. So she cruised out in front of the cameras to like fat shame Trump.
That's like obvious. That's an obvious like.
So and then
trope, she follows it's so predictable. Yeah.
She follows this up too because she's given an interview to somebody else like about that later, and so this is her second quote: "Is you're asking me about the appropriateness of the actions of this president of the United States? So completely inappropriate in so many ways, it's almost a given." She said, "It's almost like a child who comes in with mud on their pants or something." Pelosi continued, "He comes in with doggy dew on his shoes, and everyone who works with him has it on their shoes too for a very long time to come." Trump later, according to CNN, Trump later fired back, calling Pelosi a quote-unquote sick woman with quote-unquote a lot of mental problems. Pelosi responded by saying she, quote, didn't know he would be so sensitive, unquote.
No, really?
No. I mean, that's the definition of trolling, right? Like, Nancy, you're
exactly
trolling.
what it is. So if you go to like Our Politics, like the politics subreddit, and read, because I forget that not everybody is like as like self-hating as I am, that they spend all this time on the politics subreddits, but the political subreddit, Our Politics, is like very, very neo-lib, like pretty centrist leaning Democrat, is like where almost everybody is on that subreddit. And these guys are all over it, man. It is like all the top comments are like, yeah, like slay queen, like people quoting her, like, is it like her granddaughter, somebody who has that quote about like, man, she's so like, she's an assassin with her words. She could cut your head off before you even knew you were bleeding or something.
Are you talking about Christine Pelosi?
Is that who has that quote? Somebody from her family.
Well, okay. Well, Christine is her daughter, and she's like a California Democrat that you hear about a lot. And I assumed that she would do or say something celebrating those awful, just absurd comments. Like,
I mean, are they trying to act like inappropriate each other? Because like you're making inappropriate comments about his weight, he's making inappropriate comments about your mental health. Like it just feels kind of like a wash. Like,
well, to me, it's just like, I feel like people, we talked about this before, like a big problem I feel in like our national politics in general is that the right pulls the left to the right. Right. And this to me just seems like the pinnacle of that. Like Donald Trump is the president of the United States because of politics that are straight up just like a bunch of people like, oh, this is going to make the libs so mad. And like that mentality like got Donald Trump into the White House. And now instead of like fighting back and trying to like be an adult in the room, now the libs are being like, oh, Trump is fat and he has like dog poop on him. And like all of the fucking neo-lib people are going off on this thing. We're like, oh man, Trump is going to be so mad about this. It's like, what, like, dude, what is going on? What happened to the Heroes Act? What happened to the $2,000 fucking dollars per month we were supposed to have that somehow disappeared out of that fucking bill before it even made it out of the House? You know what I mean? Like, well, like, what is happening? Why? Like, what are the Democrats fucking doing? Like, I don't know, man. If you guys haven't heard, look into Shahid Buttar. He's running against Pelosi. He's running for Pelosi's seat.
So
in
that's
the election. Look this fucking guy up, man. I am so like Nancy Pelosi.
I want to see Nancy Pelosi during her race with Shahid. Like, she's going to come out and just be like, oh, nice fucking man bun, you fucking idiot.
Right?
Oh, man.
Yeah, or just she'll come out and with a name, she'll be like, oh, here's crazy Shahid.
Yeah.
She'll be fucking tweeting about him at fucking 4 a.m.
You're from England? Oh, what, mate? Oh, like... That's the tenor of the fucking
Yeah.
discourse that she's having with Trump right now.
Well, and
Yeah,
like, I mean, don't like, dude. Okay, so like, for instance, Nancy Pelosi is doing like is taking all of the things that would help the working class people like out of every single one of these bills that comes across her fucking desk, right? Like she has like $20 million in real estate assets and could not give a fuck about people who are renting in this country, right? And like, but instead of caring about that or like being upset about that, fucking Democrats are sitting around watching two people who have more money than like any of us will ever see in 1,000 lifetimes call each other fat on TV, and they're fucking eating it up, and it's making me feel like I'm taking fucking crazy pills.
By the way, our governor is a millionaire because of loans from Nancy Pelosi. Public service announcement.
So we know, I mean, the other side of it is that we no longer have a political party who doesn't like make fat jokes about their political enemies on TV. So we don't have one of those anymore. That we're both doing that. Like what's coming next? Like what is the next Trump-like thing that centrist Democrats will do that people who are excited to vote for people like Mayor Pete or Joe Biden will be like, oh yeah, cool, man, Trump's gonna be so mad. Like Trump is gonna be so mad about this.
I mean, I guess I'm looking forward to it.
Fuck's
It's
sake.
the final chapter of America. It's our denouement, and it has to get wildly absurd before the final gasp.
I would just like to point out that I think the real loser here in all of this is hydrochloroquine, because it really didn't do anything to anyone. It's a solid anti-malaria drug. I think it's the first time like the mainstream heard about it, and now they're just like, what, this fake drug out here doing nothing? And I'm like, it's been protecting people from malaria for years. Like, it may not be effective against COVID, but let's not just completely malign hydrochloroquine. So I just want to give a shout out to hydrochloroquine. I just feel like it's getting a bad rap in all of this. It's the innocent kid being tossed back and forth between the two parents that are warring with each other and divorcing. So tip of the glass.
I'll raise my glass.
Yeah, all right, yeah.
Let's raise our glasses.
Let us raise our glass.
To
hydrochloroquine.
And
That
all
was
the
for-
malaria it's prevented.
You know what? That is, I'm glad you brought that to my attention, because in all of my upset about the Democratic handling of basically everything, but this specifically, I had kind of overlooked the plight of the poor and often neglected hydrochloroquine, and I appreciate you bringing that to my attention.
Yeah,
It's an equity issue.
It's like
I
having
hear you. Yeah.
a kid where two parents are like, oh, he's great at the drums. No, he sucks at the drums. And he's like, you guys, I play piano.
Right. Right. Like, I'm a solid piano player.
Yeah, like this has nothing to do with the drums.
Yep. Yep.
All right. Well, that was pretty funny.
Voices, the things they said, voices, some from those dead, all the voices heard. Voices, things we say, voices, they're in your head, all the voices heard.
Hello, everyone. You've got Kempa.
Oh, and Shannon.
And Flo.
And Skylar. We're switching it up, guys. We don't want it to get stale on you.
Whoever's the final one has to be as sing-songy as Flo.
I actually wasn't sure who Skylar was pointing at, but I was like, everyone else is not looking, so I'm just going to go for it.
And
We're here.
it's another day in Voices River City Landia. How is everyone?
So good.
Doing all right today.
Yeah?
I'm on vacation next week, so today is
Yes.
the Thursday.
Oh
you know?
yeah, you just got tomorrow, and then you're
Yeah.
like done for like 10
Yeah.
days or something, right?
Yes.
Hell yeah.
Wait, when do you go back to work?
June 1st.
Love it.
Wow.
Beautiful.
I love to hear that.
Well deserved.
For our
if I may
listeners,
say so.
we're looking at taking the first episode of next week off fully on the whole team. So we'll be back next week, Friday, probably.
We will miss you all. And we might even drink a White Claw on Monday night.
If you guys want, I'll drink like 14 White Claws and then just kind of go through my thoughts about Nancy Pelosi by myself into a microphone for a couple hours, and we'll just release that on Tuesday.
A little
You know what? I like
Skylar
it.
soliloquy. I love it.
I like it.
Not against this.
Just slurring into the microphone. And another thing.
Yeah. I don't like the way she says this word. The
I would really
men's-
appreciate that, to be able to like notice when you become visibly drunk, right? And then when you become
Yeah.
audibly drunk, like that would just be fun for me as a really messed up adult science experiment.
You know that I'm
I
drunk when
might-
I start talking like Bane. That's a thing that I have no control over. I just go into the Bane voice, and that's how you
But
know
the
that.
darkness is your ally.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, one more, please.
You think
I might-
darkness is your ally? I was
Shit,
born
I
in the
might
dark.
just like want to. I'm just gonna
Sitting
sit,
alone
like,
in the dark in his living room. I was born in the dark.
with,
Your mom is like, you were born at 1 p.m. on the sunniest day of the year. How dare you?
Yes, but the blinds were drawn.
I am
I
the
love
League of
this.
Shadows.
yeah.
Shut up,
I'm gonna
mother.
go ahead and I'm just gonna sit on Skylar's porch so that I can hear what's happening with me and my White Claw.
Well, let's get started. So we've got a fun one to cover today.
Oh, is
little
it fun?
Well, I mean, we can like spike the football if we feel like it a little bit on this one. So a piece just came out in the Bee today saying that because of, this everything going on, the city is realizing that it will not be able to afford to pay for its bonds, its debt that it has accrued after basically paying for half of the new arena that these, billionaire like Vivek Ranadive could have paid for on his own. Decided to, so apparently, like now, a bunch of the way we were going to pay for this arena was through parking fees and through meters, parking meters, garages, as well as parking tickets. And lo and behold, because of all this stuff started happening, suddenly no cars are ending up downtown.
Yeah,
and
nobody's coming downtown for anything.
that revenue is drying up completely.
What did they say? Is it something like 5% or something of the revenue they
No.
normally have or something?
It's
Well,
not,
the
they said
parking
that it was,
meters are 5%, right?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
garages are like 90 something.
I think it's the other way around.
Is it flipped? Okay.
Yeah, it's not. I think it was 95% for parking and 7% for garages. Which is not like, as someone who has been on the losing end of a parking ticket, or, mistakenly drove my car downtown on the night of a Golden1 event and had to pay $20 at a meter to go pick up my dinner at Mother.
What do they
Like,
call that? Like dynamic parking fees or something?
Mhm.
Wait, it said this,
Hell
the city believes meter revenues have fallen 95% and garage revenues 7%.
Yeah.
Okay. So Shannon's right. So the meters are way down.
Yep.
I mean, I
was
guess
trying to
I
scroll
just
for that
didn't-
one. I didn't
was-
quite make it there.
Control
I
F.
was scrolling while I was talking too, and yeah, I guess I just didn't understand just how much money the city was making on parking, and I did know that the plan to pay back that 2015 loan of $273 million to pay for the arena was going to get paid for by parking shit, but wow.
Yeah, turns out maybe that wasn't such a good investment after all.
Yeah, especially because Golden1 is going to be sitting empty probably for a while, given that it's unlikely we'll be having very large events, since most places haven't even been cleared to have events of 10 or more, right? So,
Yep.
yeah.
I want to get this out of the way up front, because I do think it needs to be said. I think probably all of us have some bones to pick with the arena thing from the get. Before we get into that, I want to acknowledge that there is no way that the people who wanted this thing to go through could have foreseen COVID-19, and it's not fair to like beat up on people who weren't planning for a global pandemic on this scale like 6 years ago.
Right.
Correct.
They were calling it a black swan event in the article, right?
Mm-hmm.
The sort of thing that you really can't or shouldn't think about when you're considering the liabilities involved with accruing debt, because it's so out in left field that if you considered that seriously every time, you just would never accrue debt.
Right.
Correct. But I think that there were some and I think that there were some very legitimate concerns at the time that were raised
100%.
about spending hundreds of millions of dollars in this way when we have people sleeping on the street, when we have communities that don't have the light rail running to them, when we had, right? Like there were all these other infrastructure projects that could have had a really big impact. And then I think what really annoyed me about it was then when we open it up and we say, okay, we're going to have all these local businesses, how many of them are even minority owned? Let's start there. Like, I'm not even going to get into like Black, Latino, like how many are minority owned?
Right.
Because we tout that this is this like arena that has these great local restaurants and is very different than other arenas, but it's still reinforcing the same dynamic of the haves and have-nots in terms of who had an opportunity, similar to what happened with the airport. So my frustration is that we have these large infrastructure projects that do employ people for construction and all of these other things, but we haven't invested in a pipeline to be able to make sure that folks from across the city are eligible for those jobs, and then we don't make them available to minority-owned businesses. We have small minority-owned businesses right here in Sacramento who could have benefited greatly from the boost in all of their sales and popularity from being in the arena or the airport, and they're not.
Right.
A little context for, I guess, the original fight, the original conversation on even building the arena. I was brand new to Sacramento when this was all going down. This was 2012, right? I just moved out from New York. And the owners at the time were this family, the Maloof brothers.
Yep.
And they were not great owners, and they appeared to not like Sacramento that much. And
yeah, they weren't subtle about that.
They were kind of pricks. They were weird. And they also they lived a very, I guess, extravagant lifestyle, showing up in music videos and shit. And it almost seemed like they wanted to sell the Kings. On top of that, they wanted to give a final fuck you to Sacramento by selling the Kings to a different city. So there was talk of the team moving to Seattle. Were there other cities as well?
Was the main one.
That was the main one, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because the Seattle had lost the Supersonics and wanted to have another team.
Yeah, okay. But our mayor at the time was Kevin Johnson, former Phoenix Sun. He's a homegrown Sacramentan. I believe he's from Oak Park. And it was very much one of those business Democrats, right? The ones that sort of shade the gray area between the laissez-faire kind of like centrist Republicans. And he went hard at trying to get Sacramento to keep the Kings here. And that involved going after big moneyed interests, billionaires, and pulling them together and getting them to say, hey, we want to keep the Kings here and we'll do it. And here's where we'll put the arena. Here's what it's going to look like. But all of this was so last minute that it happened so fast that we didn't have really much time to have a full-on public discourse on what that would look like. Yep. And instead of, as you would think, these whales, right, these billionaires and millionaires who signed on to keep the Kings here, instead of them paying for this new arena for this team that they, said they were buying, they actually got the city on the line, kind of behind Kevin Johnson, to pay for effectively, what was it, half the arena? I
mean, yeah, I think it's something like.
Yeah. And so that's where we are today. Like the taxpayers of Sacramento are on the line for the next 40, 50 years for this arena that like these really rich people could have just kind of paid for on their own. And Flo, I know you're a Kings fan. I'm turning into like someone who enjoys watching the Kings. And like, so like, it's funny.
It's a very careful way to not describe yourself as a Kings fan.
Turning into someone who
There's a bunch of Kings bloggers that still have me blocked from a former little tiff we had. And then Carmichael Dave and I as well. But we don't even, that doesn't have to be a part of the conversation when we're talking about like the fact that the city really screwed over, lower class people of color, people in outer lying neighborhoods whose neighborhoods could really have benefited from something, a community center, something. And here we are investing more and more money downtown.
But it was to revive the urban core. Right? Wasn't that was part of the language that was used. And I feel like the urban core really got a real boost. Been down K Street lately? It's great. Completely revived.
If you want a thriving urban core, it usually starts with having public transportation that runs to where people are going.
Correct.
And so when you plan a city and have had a team for 30 years and nobody can get to the games on public transit, most places would say, why don't we run some public transit by our major destinations? And instead, Sacramento says, why don't we build a new arena?
Yeah. And instead on top of, if you really want a thriving downtown that doesn't close at 5 every day.
Yeah.
Housing. You need housing. Yes. And instead of housing, they've invested all of this money in these development projects up and down Capitol Mall, which who uses any of that area these days?
Tourists. Like legit, like I could walk down to Golden1 Arena in 10 minutes from my house. I'm never down there. Like there's just nothing down there for like locals to go do. Like there's better options almost everywhere else in the city.
I wasn't even talking about K Street, but I totally agree there too. But like Capitol Mall, right? So Capitol between, Tower Bridge and the Capitol building, that was all just kind of like cleared out. And there's no third community spaces for us to go congregate and enjoy ourselves,
There's like restaurants.
Coffee shops aren't open after 5.
Nope. Most of the restaurants like that are in that area tend to have limited hours until the arena opened.
Or it's like Il Fornaio that's like, come on.
And even when they were open, they still were like, it was hit and miss, and even today they're not open all of the time. Like there's still this idea that you're downtown for an event in the core. If you're around the, the edges, if you're further out in Midtown, maybe you're there just hanging out. But like if you're in that core near the Capitol, you're there for something work related, or you're on your way home.
Yeah. And work related being one of those office buildings on Capitol, or you're like, of the lobby class and you're taking out, somebody who you're trying to schmooze with.
Yep.
Anyway,
So what about
downtown that
Steakhouse.
people aren't able to use?
Oh God. So I think like we're talking about this and the impact that building the arena downtown had on marginalized communities or poor communities. And today, as this news breaks that the debt is going, we don't have the money to pay the debt. We don't have the revenue source to pay the debt. The communities that are going to be most impacted by that are the same communities that were impacted by the building of the arena, right? With like the potential of like parks and libraries, and then street work, the people, the workers who would do that work.
Right. So where is the
impacted.
funding coming from to pay these bonds that we have to pay?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Well,
I was
actually,
looking
speaking
at-
of that, maybe you guys can
Measure
help.
U. It's
Measure
coming.
U.
It comes from the general fund, and technically, Measure U goes into the general fund because it was only passed at the 50% mark, and so it's not a direct allocation for a specific purpose. It goes into the general fund and can then be specifically allocated and accounted for. So when they need it, they claw it back and use it for what they want.
Yeah. So
Tell me if
Yeah.
I'm wrong, because I'm trying to work out, like, crunch some of the numbers on this thing, right? So we owe $18.4 million on the arena this year.
This year.
Total. 5.3 million of that is budgeted from parking revenue that we don't have. 5.4 million of that is from other city sources, including whatever the special reserve set up to deal with it. And the rest is
Right.
paid for by the Kings. Am I understanding that right?
No, I don't.
Because the Kings pay part of this, or is the 18 million only our part? This is the part that I wasn't clear about and wanted to ask you guys about.
The Kings pay, I'm looking in the article just to make sure our numbers are right. So the Kings are supposed to contribute 6.5 million in lease payments and then 1.2 million in tax payments for a total of 7.7 million.
So that's separate from
So
what
that
the
works.
city owes.
Right.
Okay, so that does not factor into the 18.
That does not factor in, no.
Because I was going to say, if we only have, if the problem is that we're missing $5.3 million from parking revenue for the year.
So
I mean, where's that bear claw at? Do we still have the receipt on that bear claw? Because wasn't that thing like $4 million? I feel like that's a huge chunk of it right there.
Right.
I thought it was less than that, but
Can I give context? Yeah. I'm sorry for the listeners, because we have to assume not every listener listens to every episode. So the context for Measure U is this is a sales tax
and use tax
that was voted for in 2018. That was a little controversial. Flo and I landed on different sides of this. Yes. But ended up getting passed. And the idea behind that was going to go towards how are we putting it? It's
inclusive economic development.
Okay.
And underserved communities in the city.
Very glad that we have the chair of the Measure U Commission on the show.
And I only bring up the use tax part of the sales and use tax because it also includes that we purchase outside of the city that are considered to be used in the city. So I always use the example of we don't have a whole lot of car dealerships within the city limits. So a lot of people go to Roseville or Folsom to purchase cars. And so you pay your sales tax there to one of whatever city you purchased it in, but you pay your use tax to Sacramento if your address is in the city. So we actually get money on that. And the same thing is true for like Amazon packages and anything that's delivered into the city. which makes up for, in some ways, some of the sales tax loss, because we have a lot of government that is within the city limits. And so even if they're not paying for some of their land and paying the typical property taxes and that sort of thing, they purchase a lot of shipped in. And so we get Measure U money on all of that.
Right. So those dollars were supposed to go towards these initiatives, these programs. Flo, you run an oversight committee that sort of is supposed to give kind of guiding words to city council on this.
But we are statutorily prohibited from meeting, so we haven't had a meeting since February.
Yeah. So the corona.
And any conversations we have with more than 7 other people is a violation of the Brown Act. So we really can't weigh in as a body on the budget at all. I mean, we can weigh in as individuals, which I think many of us are, but we can't weigh in as a body. We can't come up with like a solid recommendation to them on what they can do as a group without violating the law.
Yeah. And even before all of this, we're all making some headway on kind of looking at where the city was throwing their money and where they were throwing their Measure U money. And immediately, once Measure U passed, the city, including Darrell Steinberg, including everyone on city fucking council, said, let's give $10 million a year more to the police in Sacramento.
Right.
Yes.
Well, I mean,
and they were already getting the bulk
oversight.
of the first half cent.
Right.
That's why, if I'm recalling correctly, that was why people were critical of Measure U, because the way that they introduced it was like, yeah, so we're gonna introduce this new tax, it'll fill up this fund, and then we'll do some stuff with it.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, yeah, no, I'm gonna need you guys to be more specific about what you're gonna do with this fucking money. Which is where the oversight committee, of course, comes from that. But as you can hear, they're not treating the oversight committee with the amount of respect maybe.
Right. The oversight is saying like, here's what we think you should do with the money. But I don't want to relitigate it. I just want to give background on all this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then on top of that, we just had city council agree to allow the police force to buy this bear. What's it called, Skylar?
Bearcat.
The Bearcat.
Okay. And
Bear Claw, per the show.
I never know what it's called because you all call it different things.
White Claw, Bearcat. White Claw, Bearcat.
They effectively bought an urban assault vehicle, a tank, right before this all started. So we're looking at this and the city's like, oh, we're going to have to cut funding. And we're looking at this and I think everyone on the show is like, oh, well, cut all of these things that you just gave to the fucking cops.
Right.
Or how about we even, consider reducing our police force since crime is down?
Yes.
Right.
I mean, like, there are so many things that we could do. The challenge, though, is that, and I had this conversation with someone from the city manager's office a year or two ago about what happens in budget cuts. And the challenge of see a headline like the one that was in the Bee, it's like, oh, we're going to be cutting back on city services. That means everybody's going to get cut back. But that's not true. The police and fire don't typically get cut, especially police. And so what's going to happen as we start talking about cutting back on services is your youth parks and, community enrichment is going to get cut. Your libraries are going to get cut. Everybody else is going to get cut. And the police are going to walk away relatively unscathed. Maybe their Coffee with a Cop program is going to reduce its funding, and that'll be about it. It's not going to be anything substantive. And that's, the power that they wield in the city. Like their union is quite strong, and it is a powerful lobbying body. And they're like the third rail of politics. Like very few people in elected positions want to touch it. And so, I think we've gone over this on the call before. I am equally as respecting and in agreement with all the reasons people were against Measure U as I am reasons that they were for them. And I think how this is going to pan out is going to be a great way for everybody who was like, I'm skeptical for these reasons and I'm voting for these skeptical reasons as well, are going to be like, see, I told you so. Because as you watch and see who bears the cuts right now, we're going to be saying, gosh, we'd have nothing if there was nothing to skin. And that's what happened in that conversation we had. They said last time they had so many cuts they had to make in 2008. And they were like, we could cut every single program and still not have enough to cut from the budget. The police and fire, they're gonna have to take some cuts, and it still didn't happen. They pretty much bankrupted, and they were close to bankrupting the city, it didn't quite happen, but because they were trying to cut everything but them.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's not even to mention like whatever they cost the city in like fucking lawsuits and shit and like all of that. Like, that's like
$550,000 this year.
Yeah. Fucking great.
Wait, more than that. 550. Okay. I guess that sounds right.
That's what I know as the settlement for the March 4th protest. I don't know how much the Clark family got. I think it was several million.
When they illegally kettled protesters, right?
Yes, when they kettled protesters, that cost them just over $500,000, and then the Clark family also got several $1 million.
No, it doesn't cost them. It costs fucking taxpayers because they don't take it out of the fucking police budget.
And there's no real the city council members do not want to do any oversight on them because there's this sort of cultural kind of thing where we march along with propaganda. I mean, I've talked about this on length, but most media outlets in a local within a city will end up sort of just spouting propaganda. They will write up whatever press release a police force puts out. They will do the funny little stories about this cop taught this kid how to ride a bike and and then barely touch on, the real police brutality.
Have you seen this? Have you guys seen the Sac Police rap video that they put out?
Oh God.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I can't even.
Nope.
All right.
I'm not doing this with you. I'm not doing this with you, Skylar.
So good.
So I was looking at before we
this
started
cop and this
recording.
kid had a dance off. Sorry.
I have seen a lot of those videos. I was looking at how much of I was trying to find the parks budget to see how much of the general fund goes to parks, and just trying to figure out if the city pulled away general funds from these spaces, what would that look like? And unfortunately,
it's not much.
My time was ticking. But so the library's revenue from the general fund is 22.3% of their budget of $53 million. So that's about $11 million. That's as far as I got. So I guess one question for everyone: do we know what the parks get from the general fund? And I guess I'm only bringing this up just because I think the dollars help us make sense of what is sense with our brains, not sense coins.
As in sense. Yes. I know the other side of that a little bit, which is what percentage of the general fund budget we give to parks, which is and libraries, which is less than 1%.
Incredible.
Now, if we flip it around to how much of their budget that makes up, and then because the general fund budget is close to $700 million, and you'll see different figures depending on whether or not they count in things that are paid out from the general fund, the net general fund, or reimbursable and that sort of thing. So sometimes you'll see different figures. But yeah, they don't get a whole, the lion's share of a city's budget is spent on police and fire. It's usually somewhere between 2/3 of the money in a city's budget is spent there. And then it's everything else after that. So everybody else is essentially clawing away at somewhere between 25 and 33% of what a city has to spend every year.
Ugh.
Yeah.
And that's why when you hit a problem, you basically are in the position where you have financially hit a problem. You're basically in a position where you have to almost eliminate and completely decimate these other services because because they're not going to take it away from them, and there's no other fat to trim.
We should decimate the cops. I would love to see them decimated.
I mean, they're the ones who honestly could
Decimate
stand the
SAC PD.
biggest cutbacks. And I mean, I think if you apply an equity analysis, it's like, I was having this conversation. What day was that? Wednesday. So yesterday. See, I'm losing.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was yesterday. I was watching that conversation. So.
We're having this conversation. I'm like, you have to apply an equity analysis to what you do with the budget. So if you look and see who is most impacted by your budget expenditures, the first place you should cut are the things that impact the most privileged people. The last place you should cut are the places that impact the least privileged people. That's the most equitable way to do this.
Yes.
So you start with, at the state level, for example, you start with, yes, we're going to make you pay mortgage tax on your vacation home because that's not an essential, right?
Right.
And so if there was one thing I'm annoyed by, it's the idea that we're not going to go after those things, and we're going after closing parks and libraries.
Yes, exactly.
Like to put it like in its simplest form, like hit the people who can take the hit. Like there's a bunch of people who can fucking take the hit. Hit them. Don't hit
I'm
the fucking people who can't
stockpiling
take it.
pizzas in my house, and Dave hasn't eaten in 3 days, and he has one slice. Yeah. Does it make more sense to come by and take 10 pizzas I'm not even gonna miss, or to take part of Dave's slice and say, sorry, we're all in this together?
Pick all the pepperoni off of Dave's slice.
We're not in this together. Dave hasn't eaten in 3 days. He finally got a piece of pizza. Let him eat his pizza and come and take the pizza. I'm not even gonna. I have so much pizza. It's in the freezer. It's in the deep freezer. I have freezers on freezers on freezers.
But here's the thing, Flo. You can then very publicly give me a pizza out of the goodness of your heart and write a press release about it and have your team on it. Yeah. And you will build up so much social capital that no one will ever think about taxing you.
The libs go bananas for that shit, man.
Totally.
Like, because you didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
You didn't have to give Dave
that was out of the kindness of your heart.
Yeah, 0, 0, 0, 0.
This is how great capitalism.
You worked hard for that pizza,
and I gave you a pizza that I have so much pizza that if I ate pizza for every meal for the rest of my life, I still couldn't eat all of the pizza. And I give you one. And I somehow get huge.
Everyone loves you for it. Yes.
No, I mean that's incredibly repulsive.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that conversation, for the context of that conversation was Flo was talking to Council Member Chenier about the $89 million stimulus money. And there's a lot of conversations that we're seeing where folks are saying, our elected officials are saying, how should this money be spent, right? And when Flo brought up the equity analysis, Chenier's response was, good. And then asked another question. Like, he could not even engage the comment. It was bananas because he doesn't believe that that's the right way to do it.
Or that it's possible either.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think a lot of those old school, and Chenier's been around there forever. I think that that's not even within the realm. Like, that's just like dream talk to him.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, a common refrain that I hear in city council is, I know how to count to 5, right? Which is some things that you don't have the votes on. And so sometimes the fights don't happen. And other times the fights do happen and they'll still say, I know how to count to 5. And so they're like, I'm going to come to the table with trying to push back and make this slightly less awful. And unfortunately, that's kind of where we are, is the counting to 5. And then some people will even say, I mean, I don't even trust counting to 5 because if one of those 5, switches on you, you're back to square one, right? And so I think that there is a level, I mean, I think that's why so many folks are excited about Katie joining the council and other and potentially the 8 seat flipping, because flip a few seats and now it's, I know how to count to 7. I know how to 8, I mean, it really does make a difference in terms of what becomes possible. And I and it's frustrating because I think the possibilities open up when you have more people who are willing to work together on these issues. But when you're facing this and you kind of know what you're up against, I think it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in terms of what's possible.
Absolutely. Can I mention real quick? I've been working all day on spreadsheets because I'm going to do a release in the next few days on the SAC Follows the Money project on the Board of Soups race between Rich Desmond and Greg Fishman. And that's to take over Sue. Which Sue is this? I get the Sues mixed up.
The Sues. Dark Sues is what I refer to them as.
The Dark Sues.
The Dark Sues.
It's Frost, isn't it?
No, Frost is still around. It might be Pete.
Susan Peters.
Yeah, I think it's
Peters. Okay. Yeah.
And she's technically a Susan.
Oh, very sorry, Susan.
We refer to them as Sues, but it's really Sue Frost and Susan Peters.
Okay.
Isn't a Susan just basically a Karen who's over 70? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah. Like Susan is the mom or aunt of a Karen.
Okay.
And Karen is definitely the mom of a Becky.
Okay. And then a Kaylee.
Right.
Kaylee, Kaeleigh. It's like 25 and under, right?
Oh, I thought that was Becky.
Yeah,
But maybe
Becky's
Becky's 25 to
25
35.
to like 35, I thought.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So Karen is like a mid-Gen Xer. Becky is like a millennial, and then Kaylee is Gen Z.
Yeah, she's
and
the
Susan
Zoomer.
is a boomer.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I think that sounds right.
Yeah, we have boomer, we have our Gen X, we have our millennial, and then we have our Gen
We got our
Z.
Zoomer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are
we calling them Zoomers now? I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're Zoomers.
Zoomers.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I love it.
Just to
It
round
has a
out my
double
quick
meaning
thought.
now that we're like doing this for his podcast too, you know?
Yeah.
It does.
That's true. As I'm doing these spreadsheets on Rich Desmond right now, I'm like 1/10 of the way through his finances, and he takes a lot from developers, as you would expect, but holy shit, does he take a lot from the law enforcement lobby. I've never seen, you don't see anything like that on our city council. I haven't seen like that in any other race that I've done these numbers for. And so I think, the more we talk about our concerns over the police lobby having a stranglehold, this race should be front and center on a local level of how we're going to approach that, and how we might want to at the very least, have one little stopgap. We all know that Susan Peters was sort of the Robin to Sue Frost's evil Republican Batman in terrorizing homeless folks, among other things. Rich Desmond might be somewhat more charismatic and well-liked, but he's the cop candidate, like 100% the cop candidate. And so I want people to think about that.
Wait a minute. On this, just so I'm clear, we are pro cop candidates on this show, or we don't like the cop candidates on this show?
100% thin blue line, obviously.
Oh, hell yeah. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure I was in the right place.
Yeah. Come on.
He has Anne-Marie Schubert's vote of confidence. She endorsed him. And Anne-Marie Schubert, for those of you who don't know, is the district attorney of Sacramento County who oversaw basically, after Stephon Clark was killed in his grandma's backyard, unarmed by two cops who never even told him that they were cops. She basically let them off free, and a year after his death, commemorated that with a national press conference where she assassinated his character. So she's
a major league piece of shit. She's like
Rich
about
Desmond
as bad
is
as
her
we
candidate.
get in this city. She's terrible.
Yes.
I was at one of those. You remember right after, or I mean, for like a year or two after Stephon Clark was killed, BLM would have those barbecues in front of her office and like put that big chain link fence up, Yeah. I was at one of those one time, and it was somebody's birthday, and somebody had made a fucking piñata of her head, of Anne-Marie Schubert's head, and brought it to the thing. and just let children beat the fuck out of it with these sticks until candy fell out. And it was one of my moments where I was like, dude, okay, this city is the fucking shit. The people who live in this city are cool as fuck. I'm hella down with this.
I love
You know,
it.
she was paranoid as hell and had like the FBI on that too.
Oh, Jesus.
No, I'm
They're
sure.
threatening me.
No,
She
whatever.
set up a fence around the DA's building.
She walked out of Temple on 20th because I was sitting there when she walked in.
Yes. I love that.
Yeah, dude, that's a listener to do. Like, what you can do to get involved. Scowl at Anne-Marie Schubert if she walks into the coffee shop that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Give her a real mean look.
Funny. That was so funny. And she was meeting up with someone that I happened to know. So that person came back to Temple afterwards to give me all the tea.
It's like, what did you do to her?
No, she was like, yes, she was like, I think she thought our meeting was going to go a little differently than it did. But
That's great.
It tells you everything you need to know about Anne-Marie Schubert.
Mhm.
Scared of a epidemiologist.
Yeah,
who
she
walks into a coffee shop.
definitely turned around on her heels and walked right. She was like, "Can we go somewhere else?" I was like, now I felt like emboldened to do. I used to say I would go to city council meetings and I was just there to be like the Batmobile and to loiter and intimidate. And I was just joking, but apparently just my mere presence causes people to choose other coffee shops. So now
Scares people
I'm
away.
doubling down on my loiter and intimidate.
We're going to get an email from Temple Coffee requesting that Flo does not come back to Temple Coffee
Mhm.
and that she
It's going to be a cease and desist litter.
Yeah, we've shit talked them on the show before, and then now just like Flo's presence at Temple is going to be a problem.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I
It
forgot
cost them 2 coffee orders. That's enough. That's
And you
enough
know
for
what?
a lifetime ban.
$10.
Yeah, you went to Naked that day later, and you met up with me. So you got your coffee elsewhere.
I did.
So should we move? Is there anything else we wanted to cover here? Like listeners, what I was going to say is that Desmond Fishman race is a real biggie, and it could swing our board of supervisors in a way where it's not there's not a stranglehold by these wildly right-wing folks. So this is an important race, and I'm not sure about Fishman. I'm not sure how much of a chance he has, but Desmond only got 45% of the vote in the primary, and I think Fishman's got a chance.
Yeah, fair enough. Do your research.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we move on then? Okay.
Let's move it along.
Let's
All right.
do it.
So why don't we talk a little bit about what's going on in the Sacramento County region on the weekend of Memorial Day. Shannon, do you want to jump into this?
Sure. So we all felt like we had some news that some things were changing. People were going to be able to hang out. The rules seem to be loosening just before the 3-day Memorial Day weekend. And I'm not sure, did the article we read talk about the like having to take some steps back? So Peter Bielenson had earlier this week, the mayor and Dr. Bielenson were talking about, people were going to be able to meet in groups of.
Who's Bielenson again? The
Public health
at the
official.
county public health.
Right.
So he's the guy who's writing all the orders, telling us what we can and can't do. And so there was a lot of talk about people were going to be able to hang out outside in groups of 10 or less. Restaurants were going to be opening up. Gyms were even talked about as being able to open up. And I think a lot of us read, and a lot of people that I talked to, myself included, were feeling like, whoa, this is there's a lot of stuff that's going to be okay, come Memorial Day weekend. And there's some concern around that. Just because people have been cooped up and it's a 3-day weekend, so they're going to get out there and party. Well, today we're learning that some of that is changing.
Yeah, because the state
So-
stepped in and told him they had to walk some of that back, right?
That's right. It was the
Right.
state that was
did.
talking about like gyms. So now gyms can't open.
Dude, did
and-
you guys see that quote from that dude with the land park fitness
Oh
thing?
my gosh. I mean,
Yeah,
that
Like
was from
let
the
me say
beginning.
first that like my heart goes out. Like 100% is an awful time to be a small business owner, especially for something like a gym right now. This is
Right.
not to denigrate that. That said, Mr. Cavell from Fitness System Gym in Land Park is quoted as saying about Sacramento having to hold off on opening up their gyms. I think it's terrible news for humanity, which feels
Like an
hyperbolic
overstatement.
to me.
Yes.
It does. Oh, totally. Yeah.
Like maybe just a little bit. I'm with you, man. Like I want to see the shit open up too, but let's walk the humanity stuff back. Maybe
This image is not in the article, and I wish it was, but it's on the front page of the Bee. It's an image of the front entrance at Fitness Systems Health Club in Sacramento with a copy of the Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
taped to the door.
That's some fucking big brain shit there, Sean
What?
Covell. I love it.
No.
Yeah, he says, I really think the state has made it clear that they intend on bullying businesses around and never letting go of the control they have on society. There's only one way to deal with a bully, and that's to fight. So he's in the middle of like suing the city and shit.
I regret that we taught people the word bully. Like there's certain words that I just feel like once we introduce them into the common lexicon, people have just been, nobody bothered to add them to their like spelling and definitions list in 3rd grade. And people have just been running with, this is what I think bullying is.
Yeah.
And right now, bullying means to lots of people being told not to do something you don't want to do.
I just like that this dude is in the middle of like one of the worst things that's happened for humanity, like collectively in like a really long time. And it's then being like, my gym having to stay closed for like another month or whatever is terrible news for humanity. I fucking love it. That's some dumb shit that like, I don't know.
I really want to know which amendment in the Bill of Rights he's referring to, like by posting it on his, like what is
Your
that?
guess is as
You
good as
opening
anyone
your
else's.
gym in the middle of a pandemic.
These guys only know about the first two. That's it. That's anybody who's going to start talking about that shit and like post the Bill of Rights in their window is interested in free speech and guns.
Free militia.
That's it. They don't. I would bet you $100 right now that if you interviewed 1,000 people who have like Confederate flag stickers on their trucks and asked them what the Third Amendment was, like maybe 3 of them would be able to tell you.
It's fascinating.
That said, I don't know what the Third Amendment is, so I'm kind of throwing stones from a glass house here. But
the Third Amendment is when
when
soldiers can't come into your home and like use it to rest and stuff.
Well, that's bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
When did we do that?
So not with
they
it.
They can with your permission, but they can't without it.
Right.
So this
Tyler doesn't like that
No,
amendment.
I don't like this
it
at
was
all.
a-
I think these
it was a
soldiers should be able to come
thing.
into my house whenever they want.
It was a thing that apparently used to happen or people were afraid of happening. Yeah, it's very clear. I mean, when you think about the health of a society, that a lot of these amendments just come down to a very low trust, low cohesion society.
Yeah.
That people were really concerned about.
They were coming out of monarchies, and they're like,
Yeah.
okay, we
Yeah.
really want to draw some lines right now.
Yeah.
I just think a soldier should be able to come into your house and sit on your couch if he wants to.
whenever they want.
His job is fucking hard, man. He needs to
Yeah,
sit down.
right.
What are you doing? You can go sit somewhere else for a little while.
Yeah. And I'm trying to open my gym to the soldiers, and I can't. Where are they going to get those gains?
I'm going to start a repeal the Third Amendment thing. I'm going to get that going on Facebook and see if I can't gin up some interest.
I can't wait to see that.
I got the time.
So anyway, gyms are not opening.
So gyms are not opening, right?
This one
so
might, I guess.
What's happening in Sacramento?
That's kind of the absurdity of all of this. And like, nothing against our public health officials, because like, holy shit, they're all riding like Broncos going through this, trying to navigate this thing. But it's like, some days you hear something may or may not be opening, other days you hear otherwise. And I don't personally like blame, I don't know, Flo, you can maybe tell me where to place some blame, but like, I don't think I blame anyone necessarily. It's like, this is something we haven't seen in 112 years, like
right.
or 102 years.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know how to navigate something like this. There's no like playbook, particularly within this political context, on what is the right and safest way to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I am usually of the belief that public health's role is risk reduction, not risk abatement, right? And most people in public health agree with that, which is why we do like sex education as opposed to abstinence only, right?
Right.
But when you're dealing with a novel virus, where most of the key questions that would allow you to talk about risk reduction are, I don't know.
Right.
And you have to go with risk abatement, like what you know is the safest thing, because you can't say to people with confidence, yes, if you do X, Y, and Z, you should be fine, right? Which is what people want to hear. They want you to reassure them that that cold they had in early February was probably COVID, and it's cool to go see grandma. And I can't say that with any assurance, right? And so that's frustrating to people, because usually we can. Usually if it's a typical flu, I can say to you, look, you got your flu shot, you're washing your hands, you don't have any symptoms, you got your flu shot over 6 weeks ago, you should be fine, go see grandma, right? Like we can't say that right now because we don't know. And so I think people are rightly frustrated because they're used to being told that they have more freedoms than they do right now, and that they're behaving responsibly by doing more than they're able to do right now. And then, for some people, it's the peril of small numbers, right? If tons of people were dying and being, impacted everywhere, then people would say, oh my gosh, it's a pandemic. They'd really believe you. And they would say, what are we doing about this? And then if you do something useful to stop it, then people say, see, you guys were BSing us, and it's not that big a deal.
Overreacting.
Only 60 people have died in my neighborhood, so why can't I go and get my nails done, right? And it's like, well, only 60 people have died because you all stayed home.
Right.
And we still don't know if it's safe to go back out. And so the moment we tell you it is, then you get sick. And then you're upset with us too. So there's a no-win situation here. If everybody goes out this weekend and gets sick, they're going to be angry at public health. And if everybody has to stay home this weekend, they're going to be angry at public health.
Right. Well, that's one thing that I was kind of going to ask about. I actually legitimately do not know the answer to this question, but like the last time we dealt with anything like this was the Spanish flu in the early 1900s, right? And like, at that time, was the flu and how to deal with it like a big political issue? Like, was there one half of the country who was like, this isn't a big deal? And like, so it was the same thing.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. Look up San Francisco and the fight against wearing masks out there. People were furious. And it was this sort of, it's the same, there have been books written on sort of the American Wild West, like, you don't tell me what to fucking do mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And there's truth to that.
Yep.
Like, people in our country don't like to be told what to do. And it does, I think, date back to that sort of like, I'm going to go tame the wilderness kind of mindset. I'm going to fucking do what I'm going to do, which I assume, Flo, is a public health professional's nightmare.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I just attended this webinar. They're happening 3 weeks in a row, and it's on violence prevention, but a lot of it is around framing messages. And I'm always really curious when like things like this come up. And so I actually drew out what they had on the screen because I thought it was so cool. But basically what they were going and they were looking at these measures of moral compass. And what they found is that people who are self-identified as liberal or even progressive side of things registered really high as care being important in terms of their moral compass, and that they thought about things like fairness, loyalty, authority, and sanctity as being much less important than care. Whereas people who identified as were self-identified as conservatives were really high, almost across the board, on fairness, loyalty, authority, and sanctity, but the care and the liberty was a little bit lower. And so to me, it was interesting to think about sort of how we all say we're coming at this from a moral perspective, but we see it differently. And so I think for some people, if you appeal to authority and you don't agree with authority, then you're wrong. If you appeal to care, right now we're telling people stay home, more so for everybody else than yourselves. And so they're like, I don't care. And then the authority is wrong, and this is the government overseeing itself or
overreaching.
Its boundaries, right?
Yeah.
Overreaching. And so I really do find it interesting how we talk about morals, but you have to disentangle what that moral compass means, because it points us in different directions.
Yeah. That's funny. I was just having a conversation with a person with a psychology background she's doing like a project on the different mindsets of conservative and more progressive minded people. And I forgot where she landed on that. I'll have to ask her to send me that piece. But I've always had this sort of theory that people who lean left have a larger sort of, I think we all view our universe in concentric circles. And the people who lean to the progressive side have larger concentric circles of who they think is part of their family, right? Who they will be willing to take care of and care for, and they have empathy for. And that could mean other species too. And people who lean right have a much, much smaller circle for what their family is, or what a friend looks like, or what an acquaintance looks like, and who they're willing to care for.
Yeah. And I think it really plays out. The authority piece came up because I was like, well, then why are we seeing all these people turning this into like a political football? And then I'm like, well, because the primary authority, when you think of the U.S. in terms of who has the greatest jurisdiction and also have the greatest platform, is our federal government. And so while a lot of states have been in alignment on how to respond to this, our federal government, the federal leadership is coming from the Trump administration. And so they feel like in some ways by defying these orders, they are obeying authority, right? And so it still plays into their overall values of like, I'm defying your lower authority because the entity that trumps you says says this is not a big deal and I don't need to wear a mask, and this is maybe a hoax and it's not a big deal and we're doing great and we're number one.
Yeah, I'm glad you addressed that. That was an initial dissonance that I was a little confused by, but that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So what's everybody doing for Memorial Day weekend?
Having a party of 11 people in my backyard.
I think by that point, I will probably have recovered from the hangover I will have accrued from yelling about Nancy Pelosi all night.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
And I'll be ready to start drinking White Claws again and do my Mitch McConnell episode.
Oh, tight.
We got to start doing some paywall things where like you just yell at me for a while, Sky.
I love to think about that.
Yeah. I'm thinking about it right now, and I gotta tell you, it feels great.
Like Flo and Shannon, you're free to be on this as well, but I assume I'm not talking, it will be all Skylar yelling. So
and us going, what?
Yeah, that's
because I have a feeling you're gonna go deep into stuff that Shannon and I are gonna be like, I don't know anything.
We'll just get
about
like
this.
super deep into
our
some like leftist Twitter
true
culture.
and on deep cuts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No. You all can I support that episode.
Yeah.
Well, it is a dream. It's a dream to dream.
I love that.
Well, guys, speaking of dreams, Okay, I don't know how to follow that up. I was going somewhere with that, and
I was so excited to hear how that was.
I
gonna
know.
be.
I was like really
I got
interested in
nothing
how that
for
was
you. I'm
going to
sorry.
work.
You've been
Disappoint.
dreaming about Voices content.
I thought you were
have.
gonna say like I had a dream last night that I lost my job and I woke up and it was
I had a dream that there was a website and it was all about the city that I live in. And there was all of this great content, whether it was podcasts or articles or things like that, that I could go and I could just access and listen to and look at and take in and like get and begin to cultivate this deeper, more like culturally enriched version of my understanding of the city that I live in and get some perspectives that I was not familiar with before.
God, that's so beautiful.
And then I woke up and here I am. I live in the city. There isn't anything like that, you know. There's nowhere for me to go. I don't know. I've been kind of bumming about it all day. And I got to tell you, it would turn my mood around if someone were to tell me that such a website did exist, and they gave me the URL so that I could go, enrich my understanding of the city that I live in and love.
Absolutely, Sky. Well, let me tell you about, have you heard the good word of Voices River City?
No, I haven't.
I cannot.
I don't know if I'm going to make it.
It is
I cannot.
it is the truth. It is the light of
Flo's
That's
church life.
good,
She's
because
melting.
you know I've been sitting here feeling like everything that I ever heard about in my life was a fucking lie, and I've been waiting for somebody to come through and just clear all the bullshit out and put me on the right path.
Dave just brought the Gospel of John.
We are not a cult.
Look at these Sacramento County officials. Up is down, down is up to them. It's a new message every day. I'm here to tell you that I have a constant message, and that message is Voices River City.
Yeah, this sounds right. I've been feeling wrong for a long time, and I feel right now. And I just want to. What else do you have to say?
Yeah, the whole notion is, it's based off of the people of Sacramento, the working class, the lower class, those who might not even have work or who might not be documented, and it's all about really bringing up other folks' voices.
But Dave, those people don't generate a ton of money for billionaires or like make anybody, like they're not doing anything for me. So like, why?
And that's why you don't see their op-eds in the Sacramento Bee, which is beholden to capital and works off of capital, advertisement dollars.
See, that makes sense. Now that you say that, now I can see that. That makes sense to me.
I mean, I guess actually I will break character real quick and say we have not been hosting many of those recently because we just haven't been doing voices the way we did the first 2 years. But the first 2 years that we did voices, it was all about, finding people, community voices who are fighting the power, fighting against corporations, and really working for their communities and trying to bring their voices up in a way that we knew that like a Bee would never publish their op-eds. We plan to get more into that. Right now, we're just doing the podcast. Things are tight for everybody, and so that's fine. But voicesrivercity.com is the site. If you start just going back on it and going to the deep cuts, you'll see a lot of really interesting sort of arts that we did. We used to cover local music. I used to do reviews on local theater. We've done some really weird stuff too. We did one piece about how it was a comedy piece about how Smash Mouth was a part of the Illuminati. So we've been all over the place, but it was a fun one. But the current iteration is mostly the podcast. We have essays coming up. Sky, I've got yours. I've got a great one from our friend Erica. I know this is on me, man. And also I've been working today on this Desmond Fishman race, which I think is really, really
Sack
interesting.
follows the money.
Yeah, the Sack Follows the Money project gets people really excited, at least the political wonks. And I always make notes of, who's married to whom and how they're related to, anti-renters' rights orgs or to, police PACs or things like that. And people really appreciate that. I color code it. I make it really simple. But that takes a lot of work. And so it's coming. I'm sorry. I need more coffee to do this. Anyway, if you want to support our work, patreon.com/voicesrivercity. If you don't have the money and we put anything behind the paywall ever, which we haven't really done yet, literally just message me and I'll just give it to you for free.
If you want to hear me like one-eyed drunk screaming about Nancy Pelosi on Memorial Day, we'll send it to you. Don't worry about it.
We're good like that.
I'll give you his phone number.
You can just give us your phone number. We'll just have Skylar call you, so you can be on speaker while he records it, so you can just get it firsthand.
That's Patreon level.
That's good. Yeah, that'll be a top tier Zoom.
Love it.
But yeah,
all the people on mute on the Zoom just listening in while Skylar yells,
just screaming.
God, I love
but if you want to help us out, you can go as low as $5 a month on our Patreon. You can do $25 a month, in which case you'll get a T-shirt and a coffee mug. So I don't know. We're doing fun shit. We've got elections coming up. It's kind of a quiet month right now with the pandemic where it is and with where all of our minds are, because we all feel a little dull. But elections are coming. We got 6 months and there's some serious shit happening, and it's time to fucking put the rubber to the road,
kick it into gear.
I'm really excited about this. So again, we've got some good local elections coming up. We've got many, for those of you who are leftists and progressives, dem on dem races in this state that you can become a part of to push that party to the left, or just confuse what that party means, especially because we have all these Republicans becoming Democrats here in California. So a lot of work to do, a lot of things to hash out. We've never seen a place like this in California where it's a one-party state. So I'm excited. And I, again, always like Sky, Shannon, Flo, you all are fucking amazing. And it's been a blast doing this with you. And you're all brilliant in the ways you do what you do, right? Shannon is a homelessness expert. Flo is a epidemiologist who's always going on big name stuff, so it's nice to have her here. And Skylar is the Ira Glass of Sacramento leftist politics.
Ira.
And yeah, so thanks to all of you. And yeah, so on Twitter, I am at Kempa.
Okay, well, I'm Shan N.D. Stevens.
And I'm Flojaune, Flojaune.
I am Guillotine for you. That is Guillotine, the number 4 YOU.
The number, not the letter.
Not the letter 4.
Our best friend, Dean Hawkinson, and his band Be Brave, Bold Robot do the music, and it's always a joy to...
real quick, I was in Temple Coffee not that long before the pandemic started, and he was having a cappuccino with Anne-Marie Schubert. And I wasn't
So
going to
he's
bring
on
it
our
up.
hit list now?
I wasn't going to bring it up, but
It's a bad day for Dean.
Yeah, do better than that, man. Come on.
I'm like trying to picture that, and it makes no sense.
That's good.
All right, everyone. Well, we will see. Yeah, so we're off next Tuesday, but we will see you next Friday.
Yes.
We look forward to it very much. Everyone have a great weekend, a great 3-day weekend. Stay healthy.
Stay sane.
Stay safe.
And stay away from us.
Stay away from